Welcome back to the Leon Block, y'all. This is part two of our episode Juneteenth and the new fight for freedom within the penal system. I'm your guy, John Tell. This part two of this episode, real quick, we're going to talk about trauma of relationships, how trauma and traumatic events lead to mental health issues, which leads to susceptibility to police violence and prison in many ways, and therefore exposure and normalization of prisoners and relations to them. Because the certainty of knowing someone else with trauma and or mental health issues is probably higher, and that trauma in the Black community can lead to a lot of things. We're in a fight or flight response, and they say that we have a high rates of diabetes and high blood pressure because of the food that we eat, but that's in part, I think part of it is due to the trauma that we deal with and the physical manifestation of being in that fight or flight response, and the spiritual manifestation of it too, which causes a lot of other issues, and we get pointed and blamed and locked up. And there's a reason for that too. But we will get to that. Just stay tuned. Happening. Hey, y'all, I just want to say, if you see people on your social media posting and sharing their forms of celebration this year and you'd like to be able to observe the holiday too, ask someone about the traditions behind the holiday. Simply learning about something new and having an understanding of a culture or a racist celebration unlike your own will open your worldview that much more. And I'm mainly speaking to white people or people of other cultures that don't really know about Juneteenth, even if you're Black yourself and you're new to this. Take the time to learn, ask people. Now, welcoming back our guest and friend to the Leon Block, Tasliym, one first of seven. Thank you for joining us again. We're going to get into a little more intimate of a discussion, right? Oh, shit. 1 second. You there? Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm here.
So yeah, I wanted to get a little more intimate. We had stopped the conversation. We were talking about trauma, but I really want to twist it a little bit and talk about trauma within the penal system and the trauma that men face on that, that having that panic of that impending doom when, you might be serving, you might be out on bail, or, you never know when you are going to be released. There's so many different variables of things that can happen. And I'm sure you could speak to that.
Yes. Yeah, so first I want to say that I see your photo that you have up here, and it says 1 in
Right.
3 Black men face a lifetime likelihood of imprisonment. Well, of those 1 in 3, 2 of them are most likely to belong to a Black woman, right? Black women, as 1 out of every 2 Black women have either a person or multiple persons who are they are supporting through incarceration. Research shows that Black women hold the heaviest cost and burden, and put more money into the penal system supporting their loved ones and fighting for, fair, accountable punishment for their loved ones. Because I just want to make it very clear before I go any further,
Mhm.
nothing that I say is to be confused with the fact that people should be accountable for what they do, right?
Right.
But there is a right and wrong way to hold people accountable. And specifically in the state of Pennsylvania, the
Mhm.
manner in which sentencing is executed is the worst in the country,
Mhm.
right? Right now, the PA Sentencing Commission is rewriting and working and has a what is it, a work in progress group to redo the sentencing laws, right? Because many people don't know that in Pennsylvania, you can go to jail for life for just being with someone that commits a crime with a life sentence attached to it. So if me and
Wow.
you, yes, so there is a movement right now with this group that I am a part of called FAM to relook at the fact that there are people sitting in jail for the rest of their life simply because they were with someone who committed a crime that has a life sentence attached to it, right? And that's unacceptable. For
Yeah.
me, if you don't take a life, you should not give your life in the penal system. Um, I also believe that if that being black shouldn't be a precursor to what your sentence will be,
Right.
which oftentimes it is. And I've had many people in my family go to jail, and I'm not happy about that, but I was never the owner of their incarceration, right? It was, oh, I'm my aunt because it's her husband, or my mom because it's her son, or so. But right now, it's my love, right? And it is crazy. It's absolutely crazy the way sentencing works in the state of Pennsylvania. So when we see someone, right, and
Mhm.
we say, oh, they have a murder to charge, and we're all thinking, oh, they're going to jail for life, right? And then we see that they're sentenced to only a 5 to 10, right? Like, how are they? And let me explain to you what that 5 to 10 means. 5 to 10 means that the minimum they have to do is 5 years. After they reaches that 5 years, as long as they have been, not in trouble while they're incarcerated, as long as they finish their programs that have been attached to them, they can go up before a parole board and be released after 5 years. And so some people say, oh, well, that's great. No, it's not great, because the rest of those 5 years are spent still under the guardianship of the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, but just outside. So you're still limited
Uh,
thing that you can do. You're still expected to exist as you existed in prison without, how can I say, with, but you have the distractions now of the free world, right? So if you tell me I can't smoke or I can't be around people doing drugs, right? If I'm in jail, which this is give or take, because at any given time people are doing drugs in jail. But if you
right.
tell me that I'm not supposed to be around people that do drugs in jail, I cannot be around people that do drugs, right? If I'm outside, there's a likelihood I'm going to be around somebody that's doing drugs, right? That can
Yep.
automatically send me back to jail. If I get picked up for violating parole, I go back to jail for the time that was left on my sentence, right? And more time may be added if they choose that a crime or something has happened in the course of me doing something that violated my probation or
Uh,
parole, right? So that's how that works. Um,
I still see the similarities there between like debt peonage and convict
yes.
leasing and whatnot.
Yes, only this is with time. And time is very valuable. You
Right.
can't actually put a price on time, because one day you have time and the next day you don't, because you're going. So when even 1 year in jail, 3 months in jail, it's time you can never get back.
Right.
And when people go into jail, if you're in jail for 10, 15 years, right, there's no way for you to be trained to come back into society, right?
Yep.
So if you have trained your mind to sit in this abnormal environment for 15 years, because you have to tell your mind that this is normal even though your mind knows that it's not. So you have to train your mind to know that it is normal for me to wake up in this box. it is normal for me to be given directives on when I can use the bathroom, or me using the bathroom in front of another person, or me,
Right.
all of these things are normal. If you don't make those normalcies for your mind, you will lose your mind, right? So when you come home, there's no program that say, okay, all those things that you learned, let's unlearn them so that you can be a productive member
Right.
in society, right? So you think because you're giving people programs on conflict resolution and violence prevention and how to think different, that that's helping them. But how is it helping them if they don't get to actively utilize those things, right? The
Right.
moment that they get to actively utilize them is when you release them from an institution that they've been in, some of them since they were teenagers, some of them since they don't. And when people say, why do people go back, right? When you know
Right.
something, you know it. And it's sad. But if you only know how to exist behind a jail, that's what you're going to go back to. If you don't know how to exist out here, you're not going to want to be out here,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I think that the system, these are educated people that come up with these systems. They're not dumb people.
Talk
They
about it.
rely on the human psyche to do what the human psyche is going to do. And my human psyche tells me if I cannot exist out here, I'm going to exist where I know how to exist.
Talk
Right.
about it.
So this is why it's very important, specifically for Black people, that when our family come home, they're not coming home to the same thing that sent them in, right? You can't have somebody that's in jail on drug charges or an attempted murder charge coming home to an environment that's still conducive of that behavior, right?
Facts.
We want to celebrate it when they're home and they're doing it, and we want to know these people, but then when they go to jail, everyone leaves,
Yep.
right? And the people that stay are normally the grandmothers or the mothers or the wives that, and this becomes a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot financially, it's a lot emotionally, it's a lot mentally, because when you're at
For all parties included, all parties, it
all
affects
parties,
everyone in the
especially the
community.
ones that have committed to the time.
Right.
Because when someone is in jail and you commit to the time that they're in there, you are actually doing every piece of that time with them. For example, I will come in the house before a certain time so that I know my last call, my love knows that we're in the house, so that he doesn't have to go to sleep thinking, is my family outside? Are they okay? Are they in an accident? Because the last time you speak to me, we're in the house and we're safe, right? It's small things like that. Um, that can become damaging, very damaging. And in Pennsylvania, judges have discretion, right? There's no the sentencing guidelines are advisory, right? So the judges have discretion. The system uses all type of tools to get what they want. They have plea offerings, they have this, they have that. And if you don't have the money, I don't care what no one says. If you do not have the money for a dedicated legal team, um
Right.
it's a problem. I
Yep.
know that public defenders are supposed to do their best, but we have to be honest with ourselves and understand
Right.
that this is a system that speaks to each other. And even if you do have the money for a well-paid lawyer, you still may end up not with the result that you want, because these people, they go to dinner together, their children are in school together, they commune. It's sad, because you're literally fighting against a system that is set up. When people say the system is not fair or the system is not working, no, the system works. It works exactly as it was set up to work. So the system is working. It may not look like it's working to you because you're on the negative receiving end of it, and you're
Right.
the one receiving all the punishment, but it is working exactly as it was constructed to work, to continue to separate families, to continue to, break down households, to continue all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And for Black women specifically, many Black women who have younger sons that go into the system or this, once their family come home, they are in jeopardy of losing their housing. They are in jeopardy of losing several things, because if you live in public housing, you can't have someone in your house that's a felon, right? If you are, these are real
Right.
things. So
Right.
it becomes like, where do I go when I come home? I can't go stay with my mother. I can't go stay with my sister. And this is why it's so important for us as a people to be as independent of the government as possible. And when I say that, I
Yes.
mean housing, I mean social programming. And I know that it's necessary because I've not always been able to pay for cash for my food. But I
But the
tell you
key
one
is
thing
to
that I
use it to
didn't
get up
do.
and out as soon as possible.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
did not, I looked at it as a stepping stone. And
Yes.
once I was able to come off of it, I came up off of it. And although I may, vent about the prices of this food, I am happy that,
You're freer.
yes, right. And one thing that I made it a point that I was never going to put my children in public housing. Yeah, we may still be in the hood, but I own
I'll
this
take
right
that.
here.
I'll take that because you know what? It may be called the hood, but the hood is short for neighborhood. It's still my
Exactly.
neighborhood. It's still my home, and I
Exactly.
should be
In my community.
right.
But
Yeah.
you're not going to tell me who can be in my house, right?
Facts.
And you're not going to tell me that I got to tell my son to leave once he turned 18. And you're not going to tell me that my son can't come back here should he ever be involved, or that my love can't come here. You're not going to tell me that.
Facts.
And we have to start looking beyond what we see on the surface. Yes, the rent may be cheap, but what comes with that?
Right.
What comes with that? Every year you have to do a renewal. Every year they want to know who's in your house, what they making, where
Mhm.
they at, any crimes been committed. This is the price for that cheap rent. And like I said, my mother grew us in a couple of public housing projects, but I told myself I was never going to do it. I was never, and every home I've been in has been outside of public housing. And it would have been so easy for me, right? Because my mother had connections with everybody. But I just knew it was something that I did not want for me because I
Yeah.
understood what it meant for somebody to be in control over the roof that is over your head,
Yes.
right? And once your children and your husbands go into this system, they are property, the same as they were as slaves. Everything on them say property of DOC, property of California, property of the state. They're property of the state now. So when we get upset about them not being treated right during pandemics, when we get upset because they won't secure them during hurricanes or during floods, on the surface, yeah, they may say, oh, we care or make an effort, but the reality is they are no longer seen as people.
Nope.
They are property. And what happens in hurricanes? Sometimes property gets destroyed. What
Right.
happens during floods? Sometimes property gets destroyed. During a pandemic, property gets destroyed, right? And what do? You write it off as a casualty, right? You write it off as a loss. This is how they look at our family. This is how they look at us, right? The fact that you can tell somebody that you're going to give them 30 years in prison or 60 years in prison or 50 years in prison, especially for people that have not committed a crime or did harm to another person, is beyond me. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then you have people that are legitimately doing harm to people and you let them walk right out.
Yep.
You let them walk right out.
You take
And
these motherfuckers to Burger King and McDonald's and give them fries and shakes.
exactly. Or enroll them at Texas A&M. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
And it hurts me because right now I'm in this situation. And my specific situation, yes, harm was done to another person, but the harm was done to another person to eliminate further harm being done to the person.
But I'm
Right?
sure that the situation that came about was because of the product of the society that we live in and how unfair it is to our
Absolutely.
people to
And
begin
you
with.
want me to tell you something else about these sentences? The judges request something called a PSI, right? And this PSI is a listing of all of your history, your family history, any drug history, criminal
Wow.
history of your family. They request this. And so the judges have this at their disposal so they can see everything that led up to you being the person that is standing in front of them at that moment. And you know what they're doing now in Pennsylvania? They're using that as a precursor to say, you know what? You are more likely to keep offending. So we're going to give you more time.
Oh hell no.
So for my love in particular, the judge actually said during his sentencing that she didn't think he was a danger to the community. She didn't even think he was in need of correctional treatment. She said that she believed he was extremely remorseful. She said all of these things, while my husband was incarcerated, he's not my legal husband, but he will be soon. While he was incarcerated, he saved the life of a CO. He's worked all 5 years. Mind you, it took him 5 years to be sentenced. So he sat in jail for 5 years, not knowing what his sentence was going to be. And then, with all of that and a recommendation of 10 years, the judge turned around and gave him a 30 to 60, which means that he's not even eligible to be free until 30 years pass. The 5 years actually means nothing, because even though he owed the state back time and he sat for 5 years, county time can't be attributed to the state. So he has to do 6 years that he was on the 6 years that he owed on probation before his 30 years even start. So then you have the appeals court process, and that's what we're in right now. And you just hope that the people that are sitting in these superior courts have just a little bit more, you know, can
Once
dig into the situation.
again, once again, our life is in the hands of a bunch
Yes.
of rich white people
Mm-hmm.
or people of a different class that don't see us as humans. They see
People.
us as, again, property.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we all
Again,
have to remember. Your
when
property.
we're in a society that just consumes, we're in a capitalist system that our people built. Capitalism was built off of our backs,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that we're excluded from it, and capitalism is all that other people, especially white people, because they created the mechanisms of this. That's how they work, and they speak in terms of capitalism. So of
Mm-hmm.
course, to anyone that's non-white, they're going to be deemed like consumable rather
Mm-hmm.
than a human. And
Yes.
for me, that's the way my mind works when I look at this stuff.
And it's not for the faint at heart. I see a lot of shows that make light of relationships between inmates and people on the outside, the love after lockup shows and stuff. And it actually makes me upset, because this is not a joke. It
Right.
is not funny. It should not be for entertainment. This is real. It's very real. And a lot of people don't make it out of there. A lot of people don't make it out of there. My professor from Newman University just assisted. I shared this on my LinkedIn, and getting justice for someone who 91 years ago had been convicted of a
Wow.
crime at the age of 16 in the state of Pennsylvania, of murder that he did not commit, but they killed him. They killed him. And
Wow.
now, 91 years later, he's being exonerated, I guess you can say, or justice is being
Yeah.
um but he's going. And someone from his family, I believe it was his sister, she's 92 years old now, and by the grace of God, she has lived long enough to see her brother. It means something. Some
Yes.
people may say, well, 91 years is too long, but it means something to hear it out of somebody else's mouth that my brother did not murder somebody. You don't want to go around thinking that your family is a murderer, your family member is a murderer. It means something. I know people say justice delayed is justice denied. But you tell that to somebody that's sitting in a jail for 30, 40 years, waiting for someone in a court to say you can go,
Right.
right? That justice, it doesn't matter how long down the line it comes, as long as it ends in your freedom, it's your freedom, right? So I don't really like that quote, because delayed justice is still justice, right? Is it sad that a 16-year-old paid with his life? Is absolutely deplorable. But the fact that his sister got to hear before she leave this earth that her brother did not do that is a blessing.
Even if we get reparations today, it still changes the trajectory of what we have now, and it still does our ancestors due diligence that we can do something with that
Mhm.
if we choose to. um and that's another thing that I want to speak to, is like, it's important because it does classism, and the separation of classes is a big thing as well. And we can't always look at it as a matter of race, because when it comes to the capitalist system, it works in a sense of money, and that's another mechanism to keep our race down.
Mhm.
And I think that's important for people to understand as well. Like, there it's a conundrum, it's a revolving door. It's meant to be that way. It's meant to look like an open air prison that can produce a few millionaires and billionaires and celebrities and keep the rest largely kept away and in impoverished crime ridden areas, and create so many different variables to justify and explain away those pockets of people, that it creates a system where even our own people don't even really think much of it.
Exactly. I actually have my husband, soon to be husband, on the phone, and I just want you to hear it from him. Says, if you can just explain what it feels like
Yeah.
to be, what it feels like to be in the prison system right now. Like, what does that feel like to you? How does it make you feel as an individual?
Makes me feel horrible
In what way?
in the way that I should be home with my family and my kids. I'm just sitting here waiting.
And do you feel like you are looked at as a human being? Do you feel like you're treated as just another number? How do you feel in that
As a number,
respect? As a number?
yes.
Yeah. So that's just from somebody that's sitting there and that's living it. Like, they don't see you. Like,
Right.
they don't see you. And if you don't have family on the outside that's willing to do the research, that's willing to build relationships with the people, that are in charge of these prisons, because that's what I do. I build relationships wherever he go, so that people can see the people that love him. And if you see that people love him, then maybe you will look at him as just a little bit more human, right?
Yes. Yes.
And if you can see us, then you can see him in a different light, because all you get to see of him is him in this prison. But if you know he has a son, if you know that he has a family that is waiting for him to come home, then you're more likely to look at him as a human being. You're more likely to see him as a father. You're more likely to see him as a husband. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's just not like that for people. You'll have people that'll do 3 months, 4 months committed, and then you'll have like a year go by and they don't have anybody. Um,
Right.
it's definitely, it's, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard. It definitely makes me feel like when you're sitting there watching your family be sold off, and it's nothing you can do about it. Them women couldn't do anything about a slave master coming and taking their husband because he was the strongest on the field and they needed him somewhere else, right? You can't do
Right.
nothing about that. You can't do nothing about walking past and seeing your husband lynched from a fucking tree. You can't do nothing about that. What they do? They pick up, they take the kids that belong to that man and his wife, and they keep moving. And the issue here is that now when people go to jail, like, there's not the village anymore to come and help the children of
Right.
the person that's missing, to come and help the wife, to come and help the mother, to come and help the grandmother, to take some of that stress off of them, right?
Right.
Now everybody just disappears, and then when the person comes home, everybody want to be at the welcome home party.
Yep.
So it hurts. And like I said in the beginning, this is not to say people should not be accountable, but the law should not be such as should not be set to where your accountability ends with you having a life sentence for something that didn't take a person's life.
But
You know?
but we know why it's that the way it is. The way it is that people they had to find a way to keep the status quo going the way it is.
Yes.
Um, I just now saw your messages, but I want to let you have time because I know like we're running late, but I want to let you
Yes.
have time to speak to your husband, and
Yes.
I'm gonna let you go.
All right.
And yeah, we can bust it up later and talk
Mhm.
more. Everyone, just We will leave some information up for Tasliym to, to get in contact with anyone if they have further questions
Yes.
with her. Is there anything you want to let people know before you get off?
Just be good people and always do research. If something is new to you, do your own research. Don't let the media or even someone that you truly like do all the research for you. You can follow them, but always follow up and do the research for yourself.
Agreed. I couldn't agree more. All right, fam. I'm gonna let you get off of here. It's been a pleasure, and I'm
Yes.
sure we will have you on another time. Thank you so much for joining
Thank
us,
you.
and you have a
Peace.
good night, love.
You
Bye.
too.
All right, y'all. It was a pleasure having Tasliym, first of seven, on the show. I want to bring this full circle by having a clip come up of a discussion that I found surrounding Juneteenth. So take a
Deliver
listen.
a comprehensive presentation breaking down how systemic racism works. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means and what is the correlation between systemic racism and Juneteenth?
Sure. So I would just invite people, if they want to see a 20-minute version of that lecture, to go to either my website or to my Twitter handle, which is Prof. Trisha Rose, or just trisharose.com, because I'm not going to be able to do it all here. But you know, my work on systemic racism is an effort to really help people see how systemic racism works and what it is. And the basic definition is that it's an interconnected set of policies, norms, and beliefs that work in a comprehensive and interlocking manner to routinely advantage whites, to create racialized advantages for whites while producing cumulative and chronic adverse outcomes for Black people and people of color more generally, although not all in the same way. Black people do face the brunt of a systemic racist system. The important thing about the systemic language is that it connects pieces of the puzzle to one another. And I use the metaphor of gears, which, if you go watch the video, you'll see. And the idea there is that we look at economic, legal, wealth, criminal justice, education, housing, and one could keep going with health and any number of other aspects of society that relate to one another. One set of policies here connect to another set here, connect to another set there. And that together you begin to, when you examine it all told, you now are able to ask meta questions about the system. Whereas if you just say, why is education so terrible, right? Why are Black people not being promoted in their jobs? Why is there a kind of what we call channeling down, right? Where managers get jobs as, entry level, even with 15 years of experience, right? Why it sort of looks like these things don't all fit together. But when you look at it systemically, now you're able to see that there's a kind of a project involved of diminishing, controlling, extracting. There's a whole set of practices that work together. And that is what you see if you look at Juneteenth. Juneteenth wasn't just about saying we're not going to listen to Lincoln. It was about trying to hold on to the economic, social, and political control that slavery made easier. And as John mentioned, what we see after slavery and the end of slavery is a kind of re-enslavement project, which is, also, there's a number of books that have dealt with that. But this effort to re-enslave illuminates that slavery was a means to an end, right? And that when that process continues through to the present. So systemic racism shows that it's more elaborate, more complicated, less direct, but highly interactive and therefore very significant.